Hey there, welcome to the archive. So this is I told you this was really long. This is part three now, and anyways, let's just get into it. So this one is going to be called "Is Suicide Ever Resistance?" And so when you're stuck in these machines that are intentionally built to destroy and dehumanize you, when eugenics is coming for you at every turn, dying by suicide can sometimes be resistance depending on the context. Now, I understand it's hard to hear someone framing suicide as resistance in certain circumstances, but hear me out. There is never a reason for anyone to die by suicide. I already said that in the last, I think I've said that in all of these. There's never a reason for anybody to die by suicide, period. Which is a very point, right? A human being must feel so dehumanized, so disembodied, so disempowerless and hopeless to change their situation that life no longer has any meaning. Here, I'm thinking of an article I read recently that mentioned death by suicide as a form of resistance for enslaved Black Africans who, when they realized their circumstances were dire and inescapable, they decided to unalive themselves. Again, this is where I have an issue with suicide being framed as a choice. I don't always think it's a choice in that sense, right? Because that then places the onus on the individual for having quote unquote killed themselves. But we don't look at the circumstances. To me, that's murder, actually. Is that controversial? Maybe. But we don't look at that as murder because there's no one actually, there's the invisible hand is what the invisible hand, capitalism, I can't think of it right now. Friedman? No. Who talked about the invisible hand in capitalism? We don't, because there's nobody to actually point a finger at and say, this is what this person killed this person, so therefore, right, you know what murder is. But I think I find it very strange when we frame suicide as something that was a choice, especially when I'm in these circumstances I'm talking about. When the person is in dire, inescapable oppression, when there is just repulsive, vile levels of dehumanization, when they are not being fed adequately, when they are being overworked, when you are being raped and molested and whipped and tortured, why is it that choosing to die by suicide, that is seen as something that a choice you made? Rather than looking at the circumstances, the conditions, the human beings that were torturing you as responsible. I find that very odd. We're not holding the right people accountable. And then the person decides to unalive themselves, and now it's framed as suicide, which it is. But at the same time, we have to look at the conditions. What was the conditions this person was under or in that caused them to get to that point? And so the author was talking, I've heard a few people talking about the evil people who, when they arrived to the Americas, they realized their fate. They just turned right back around. They walked into that water, and understanding their spiritual, the African cosmologies that they were coming from, they understood that there is life beyond this, and they preferred to literally drown. Right? You've heard stories of folks the enslaved who jumped ashore. Others took their own lives on the plantations. They realized that taking themselves away would negatively impact their so-called owners, the slave masters. This makes sense on some level, right? Though it quickly dissolves and it falls apart completely. So this is another thing. Often with me, I go so far and I'm like, nope, I'm not all the way down with it. Peace, bye. And this is one of those situations. Is suicide resistance? I mean, to a certain extent, but it is not actually very subversive, and I'll get into that later. But if someone is exploiting you, if they are using you for labor and all that you're good for is your labor, if they are stealing from your personhood, if they are making profit off of you, you're being raped and molested and beat and whipped and treated like chattel, it's understandable that your absence would cost them financially. That kind of like, I would literally rather die than for you to make profit off of me. There is a form of resistance in that. If I unalive myself, you can't make money off of me. And all I'm good for to you is money. And I can't escape the situation. So you know what? I'm going to go. But here's where it falls apart. Capitalism actually doesn't care about our feelings or if we even exist. It sees people as machines. It's transactional. It keeps people around so long as it can keep producing for them. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. And that's not in an interdependent type of a way, where I do for you, you do for me, and it's reciprocal and interdependent, and our livelihoods are bound together. That's not what I'm talking about here. This is an exploitative way. The only way I'm scratching your back is to keep you alive so you produce for me. I'm only gonna do this for you so you can produce babies for me, so your babies become my property. That's what I'm talking about, right? And this is why some of us in this day and age have this slave master mentalities. People will be begging for resources to survive, the most basic necessities, and others are asking them to produce labor and keep up with them. Meanwhile, they have way less than you do. It's inhumane, right? If you are this type of person, if you're not this type of person, then this shouldn't bother you because that's not you. But if you are, then like for me, I will immediately burn that bridge. When I sense that somebody cares more about what I can do to produce rather than my livelihood, it's like I will burn that bridge. I hope you know that. Right? Because what about my humanity? You don't see me as a human being. You don't care about all. And again, yes, producing is tied to livelihood. So I understand where the tough love comes in now. Because you can't complain about not having your basic necessities if you're also not doing enough and you're not doing for yourself to create a change in your life that's bringing in some sort of resources to keep you surviving. I understand that. That's not lost on me. You don't think we know that? You don't think people want to be able to produce in a way that moves them forward in life? Or do you really think that we're just that lazy? Because that's not it. People want to be able to be independent. But if you are in a debilitating situation, if you can't function in the same way, there's so many different ways. And they'll be like, this is an excuse. You're making excuses. Okay, fine, valid. Let's move on. Because if you claim to love me or us, but you can't hear us when we're in pain, if our pain makes you so uncomfortable that you're always trying to rush us past the pain to push through, when we can barely do for ourselves, like that's just a yikes to me. It's giving very much the slave masters who just like made women return back to the fields after they gave birth and delivery. Like we're not allowed to take a second to just recover from all of this vile, disgusting situations we're in. We're not deserving of just a moment of breath. We're not deserving of rest. Trisha Hershey's work talks about this. Like, come on. All you care about is money and profit. That's just wild to me, especially in this day and age, especially with the pandemic, especially with climate crisis. People's houses are being burnt down. People can't afford air conditioning, and they have different health conditions. Like, it's just let people pause for 2 seconds. Just stay far away from me, those kind of people. Like, you're not my people. You do not care about my livelihood, no matter how much you say it's for my own best interest. It's like beating someone, being like, well, it's because I love you. How? Why? Like, what made you connect those dots? How did abuse become love? What are you talking about? I had to get that off my chest as well. So herein lies my point. They really don't care about losing it, though. Like, it's not funny, but it's just they don't care because someone else will come along to replace you anyways. They'll move on to the next best thing, right? There's always going to be someone else to replace you. Well, actually, they will replace you. You are disposable is the message. You are dispensable is what they're trying to tell you. You do not matter. Good riddance is the message. And then I'll get in trouble because I'm saying, well, good riddance. Well, that is the message. You did not matter when you were alive. So you died by suicide. That is the message. Good riddance. We're going to move on to the next one, because you never mattered in the first place. It was never about your humanity. It was only about what you could do for them. Which leads me to the nasty, vile ass bullies that make your life miserable on purpose. For those people, take away yourself is a resounding chorus. They don't care if you kill yourself. You know what, matter of fact, they're rushing you along through that process. They are insensitive. There are people who would pray for your downfall. Believe that. Boo hoo hoo is what they say to those that they think suicide is a desirable fate for you. If they think that you're undesirable, they don't care for you, they don't like you, you don't kill yourself. You really are expecting sympathy for somebody who doesn't like you? They don't care. That was my experience. Those who do not like me, my enemies didn't give a when I tried to die. They were rushing that process along. They were laughing. They thought it was funny. It was hilarious. Your death means nothing to them. And we're not honest about that conversation. We're not honest about that because in certain contexts, especially if you've made a mistake, especially if people don't like you, they don't care. And again, on the flip side, that also makes sense. Because if you are my oppressor and you're dying left, right, and center by suicide, I can't say that I'm going to have any sort of remorse for that. You cannot feel sympathy for your oppressor. That's not going to happen. Good riddance is what you'll get. Dude, please take away yourself. And quick, right? You can't have sympathy for someone who is oppressing you and who supports systems that essentially try to kill you. So I also understand where folks are coming from when they're saying, like, why am I having sympathy for somebody who's been oppressing me? Right? But that's not what I'm talking about here. That's not what this is about. What I'm talking about is lateral violence. I'm not talking about top down. I'm talking about lateral violence. Right? People online telling others to kill themselves just because they're behind a screen and there's no accountability and they think it's funny to just egg people on when they're saying that they want to die by suicide. I'm talking about the ones who mock and make fun of people. I'm talking about the insufferable ones, the ones who blame folks, the ones who negate folks, the ones who nothing's ever good enough for them. They don't care if you die or live. And you have to be honest about that. There are people who don't care. They're not like this is where it becomes insensitive, right? They may even think that you deserve it. They can't wait for you to take your own life. When someone dies by suicide, but then all of a sudden, if someone dies by suicide, then oh my god, they act like they care. Oh, good, that's so bad. That's mental health issues. I mean, those people. Stop it. Just shut up. Stop lying. I know what it's like to have people not care if you die by suicide. I definitely know what that's like. I've definitely experienced that. And I was saying that recently, the TDSB principal who died by suicide. And there's a whole host of, I have no clue. I'm not going into it because I have not read the court case. I just read an article, and not much. But I was thinking like, it took a white man dying by suicide for us to consider how hard we can be on each other. But when the black woman was being discarded, abandoned, pushed out of community, left with no resources, dying by suicide, you did not care. So why all of it? This is an issue. We care. Certain people, we feel remorse for them when they die by suicide. Others, we do not. A black woman will die by suicide, and the majority of people will not care. They will actually think that she deserved it. Good riddance is what we get. Boo hoo hoo is what I got. So they'll cheer you on and even hurry you up. I've seen someone posted something about how she told her friend she had an ideation, and the friend sent a meme making fun of them for being dramatic, right? That's what some of us get. We don't get sympathy. We don't get like, oh my God, what do I do? What can I do for you? How do I help you? We don't all have the Dr. Jennifer Mullins in our life who know what community is, who value the community, who show up for people. Some of us have tough love. Get over this. We're all going through it. Shut the fuck up. I don't need to hear you complain every day. You're miserable. You're negative. That's what we get. There's no sympathy. People get sick of hearing you talk about your pain. They don't care. That's what some of us get. And now is my frustration. Why is it that when certain bodies that we feel are valuable die, then all of a sudden we're having a conversation about how tough we can be on each other? Meanwhile, more times we're bragging about how we're toughest on each other. But like, this math is not math. So that's all I wanted to say. Most of us, where we get met with silence, people pretend it never happened. They don't care. And until you've lived through that, until you've lived through an attempt and people just stood there, when you live a life where people, even the slightest thing you write, people will see and spread, they will hear everything you say, but all of a sudden, when you're mute all day because you tried to kill yourself, and they just pretend that that never happened. Oh, so you can watch me 24/7, but when I'm dying on the deathbed, literally trying to kill myself, then what message does that send somebody? Do you know how hopeless and worthless that makes an individual feel? So that's all I wanted to talk about. It's just sometimes suicide can feel like resistance. If it's not moving anywhere, then we have to consider it as a valid response. Just like addiction is a valid response to some of our circumstances. You can't have people living in shitty realities 24/7, just fighting just basic survival. And then when they decide to exit themselves from the game, now they're the issue? No, they were never the issue. The issue is a game. The issue is a system. So I'm going to leave it there because this is getting long. Please do what you have to do for self-care. Again, don't underestimate the powerlessness and the hopelessness that drives anyone to consider dying on their own terms. So I'll end this one here. There's probably just one more where I want to get into some statistics to drive home the seriousness and severity of these conversations, because people feel really hopeless out here. And we have to really look at the full spectrum of what's going on rather than just blaming them. I haven't even touched on the brain stuff. I haven't even touched on hormones. The science, the whole science behind suicide. That's not it. I was just talking about, again, from my experiences, these are some of the different things to consider. Going back to powerlessness. Anyways, I'll touch on it in the next vlog. Until next time.